This is the Variety Sports Network created for the fans, by the fans. Now to your host of tonight's show.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Variety Sports Network, the Saturday Showdown. As you see, we are without the CEO today. Caleb and I taking you on a journey. Caleb, how you doing tonight?
Doing pretty good. Just, another week, another tough loss. So just trying to make it through till hopefully better luck this week.
Yeah, I feel for you, man. Like you were telling me before we got on here, the close losses just keep piling up. Between the Bama and LSU game, you guys have lost by less than a touchdown, pretty much.
Yeah, 6
I mean,
points.
that's crazy that you guys have been, just bad. I give you guys credit for battling as hard as you can. Just coming up a little bit short each week has got to be tough. Luckily for my Buckeyes, we've continued the winning ways. I think we've got, Penn State this weekend, a really, really tough game. I think is that your game of the week this weekend, based on the schedule?
Yeah, that's a close one. The only other one I would maybe put up there would be Utah USC.
Yeah, that's a good one. Is Cam Rising back for that one? Because if so, then I think you have to give it to Ohio State, Penn State, because that's a top 10 matchup. But yeah, that's not a bad game out west for sure. Caleb, recapping last week, did anything from last weekend really surprise you?
I think the surprise for me was the beatdown that USC took from Notre Dame. I expected a closer game, not a blowout. And I mean, you see what happens whenever, I believe it was said, that's a typical Lincoln Riley team, all offense and no defense. And you see what happens when you play against higher level competition,
Yeah. Who do you think, based on 7 weeks of action, who do you think's the best one-loss team in college football right now?
Ooh, that's a one-loss teams.
Based on my opinion that I've seen so far, I'm going to go with Oregon right now. I think that game against Washington was very, very impressive both ways. And I think that's the best loss that any team has right now. Do you have anything different than Oregon being the best one-loss team?
I think if I had to say, I want to lean towards Oregon, but if I had to look another direction, I think it's very close with Texas.
Texas is a good answer because, I mean, that loss to Oklahoma it's only looking better, and they're going to probably end up with a chance to redo that game in the Big 12 championship. Looking at the AP Top 25 this week, Caleb, Georgia, Michigan, Ohio State, Florida State, Washington, Oklahoma. In your opinion, is Georgia still the team to beat?
I know that, we've had some back and forth on social media this week, with just our network and talking about how we've have people, ranked for us compared to the AP poll. And I mean, for me, I understand Georgia doesn't look as dominant they have been in years, but they're still undefeated. They're finding ways to win games, whether it's close or not. And I think until they lose, you still got to say they're up there at the top. They're the defending champions. They're still undefeated. They're finding ways to win games, even though they're not necessarily blowing out teams like they did in the past 2 years. Mm-hmm. I still think with them being undefeated and until they get beat, to me, they're still the top team.
All right, Caleb, doing a little bit deeper dive on Georgia. They're off this weekend. They play Florida next at home. They play Missouri at home, Ole Miss at home, Tennessee away, Georgia Tech away. Their final 5 games. Do you think they run the table and end up undefeated?
with who their opponents are, I think it's going to be close. I could see them losing one of these games. I think it's a coin flip of do they? We've seen Missouri look surprisingly good, and
Yep.
Ole Miss still has a chance. They have a high flying offense that you got to think too with Georgia. You don't. There's no Brock Bowers for 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, that's kind of why I'm doing a little bit deeper dive here. Without their best player, now's the chance for them to maybe slip up. I didn't know if out of those last 5 games, you really saw somebody who stood out to you that could take them down.
I could see it being possibly Missouri or Tennessee. Ole Miss. I probably lean more towards Ole Miss than Missouri. But Missouri surprised us so far this season with games that we picked against them, and they found games to win. They lost to LSU by a close margin, so they might can put things together here and get a win against a injured Georgia team.
Yeah, no, I like where you're at with that one. And then let's touch a little bit more on the big game last week between Washington and Oregon. What stood out most to you in that game, the battle out west?
I think for me, when you look at it, you've got to look at the quarterback play back and forth. These two Heisman, contenders battling back and forth. And I mean, if you say right now, Michael Penix got the win in this game, and he's easily vaulted himself up, in more contention right up there with Caleb Williams. And after Caleb Williams' performance last week, I feel like it's more equal playing field.
For sure. That was actually going to lead me into my next question. Do you believe Michael Penix Jr. has done enough to be the Heisman favorite at this point?
I think it's close. I think if you just look at their games so far, in a big game situation of the two, which one stepped up and got his team the win? Michael Penix Jr. I mean, I know it's not necessarily 100% fair to say that against Caleb Williams because his defense is not that great, but if you look at his stats from that game, he had several interceptions and didn't look the sharpest either.
Yeah, that's a good point. Any non-quarterback that you think has still got a shot at competing for the Heisman?
At this point, I think it's a quarterback battle right now. I don't see anybody else at the top. I mean, with just how well the quarterback play has been this year, it's hard to look at any other running backs and guys like that. I mean, you got to still consider that maybe Marvin Harrison Jr. is still up there. But I think right now, if you look at the top, maybe 2 to 3, it's going to be quarterbacks.
Yep, I think that's very fair. Caleb, I pulled up our pick'em here for 2023, the one we're doing with all of our fans. Just want to give a quick update on that. As of right now, you and Brandon are sitting at 10th, or you're at 8th. Brandon's at 10th. You're sitting at 42 and 28. Brandon's at 41 and 29. I am at 39 and 31. Tough couple weeks in there. Right now, we've got Ted Ertl at 1. Joe, NY Joe at 2, and then DH Marbury at 3. There's still some time, Caleb. It looks like we might be giving out some gifts to some fans. What are your thoughts on this week's slate of games? What really sticks out to you this week?
Yeah, there's some interesting games this week. I think you're starting to see this week, as buys come into play, you have maybe some teams that aren't as high up in like your top 25 matchups as we've had in the past few weeks. You see some lower tier teams getting kind of the spotlight in the pick'em this week.
Yeah, I agree. I thought, like a game between 6-1 Toledo and 6-1 Miami, Ohio, like that's a game right there. 2 really good teams in their conference that are getting a little bit more shine that, doing pick'em, you get to see some of these matchups that you maybe not have seen with your TV provider. So I like that you brought that up. Like a Georgia State versus the Louisiana Raging Cajuns, another low-key good game on ESPNU. definitely some games to look forward to this weekend. Let's go ahead and get our picks in here, Caleb, this week. Let's start right off the top with the biggest one. Penn State, Ohio State. Caleb, who do you have winning this one?
Yeah, I think for this one, you got to go with your Ohio State Buckeyes in this one. Just kind of a similar situation with Georgia. They haven't been beat. They've came out against a Notre Dame team that took them to the wire, managed to get the win, came out and competed. This is an interesting Penn State team led by a freshman quarterback. That'll be interesting to see how he handles going on the road to get against a top 5 team,
Right.
and what he does on the road in that type of situation.
Nope. Well said. Well said. Brandon picked Ohio State also. I'm going to side with my guys. This is a really, really, really important game. This is a prove-it game for both teams, in my opinion. Yeah, Ohio State beat Notre Dame. And then flip side, Penn State, they have not played anybody yet, and this is their chance right here. Number 3, Ohio State in the shoe. They win this game, and they're sitting really pretty with the end of their schedule, with the Michigan game coming around. Let's jump ahead. Memphis Tigers versus the UAB Blazers, led by Trent Dilfer. I got to say, I like the brand of football UAB plays, but I'm going to go with Memphis. Are you going to deviate from that?
I was about to say, I've got to go with Memphis in this one. They're expected a high-scoring game with an over-under of 62. They've got Memphis nearly a touchdown favorite. I think the way they played this year, you've got to give them the win here.
Brandon also has Memphis, so another clean sweep. Then we move down, another Big Ten battle. The Golden Gophers of Minnesota go to Iowa. Iowa is ranked 24th right now. Anyway, Minnesota pulls the upset here, Caleb?
I don't think so. I think even though you see Iowa with the loss of McNamara, I think last week, they were able to step up and get the win in the matchup last week with Wisconsin, and I think they're facing that adversity, and I think they get the win this week.
Yep. Let's see. Brandon went with Iowa also, so clean sweep again for that. Let me pull this back up. Switching these pages around. Next game. This is an interesting game. Oklahoma State versus West Virginia. I got to say, Caleb, right off the bat, every time I pick against Oklahoma State, they beat the team I picked to beat them. So I'm done playing that game. I'm picking the Cowboys to beat West Virginia. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, this is one that I've went back and forth with this week. This is, I think, one of the tougher ones to choose from, even though they're not two ranked teams, but they're two very good teams that, you look at Oklahoma State, they had that loss to South Alabama early in the season when they were playing quarterback merry-go-round. West Virginia has just, came out and had some good victories. They lost to a close matchup with Houston last week. In this game, I went back and forth, but I think I've got to go with West Virginia in this game.
Good pick. That's a good pick. Brandon actually went with Oklahoma State also. So, yeah, that's 2-1 Oklahoma State there. Next game on the agenda, little Maction. Toledo at Miami of Ohio. Toledo is favored by Vegas, minus 123. I'm going to go Miami of Ohio to pull off this one. What are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, another game that even though they're two teams that don't get a ton of notoriety with it being in the MAC, they're two teams that are very closely matched. The spread in this game is only 2 points. Toledo favored. So it'll be interesting to see which way this goes. I think for me, I've got to lean with Miami of Ohio as well.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. Looks like Brandon went Miami also. Clean sweep again. Here's a team that's actually been featured quite a bit on the Pick'em, Caleb. UTSA Roadrunners versus Florida Atlantic. I'm going to go with the Roadrunners here. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, it's an interesting matchup, like you said. UTSA, another team that's been featured in a few pick'ems throughout the season so far. Favored by 2.5 in a projected to be a high scoring game with an over under 58. You look at who each opponent's played and who their losses come to, with FAU losing to Illinois, Clemson, Ohio. You've got UTSA losing to Tennessee and Army. When it's all said and done, I've got to go with UTSA and the Roadrunners.
Yep. And then Brandon actually deviated here, and he went with Florida Atlantic to pull the upset. So I respect that decision. Trying to make up a game on you in the pick'em, it looks like. Next game on the agenda, Ole Miss Rebels at Auburn. I think Jackson Dart's played really good football this year. I'm going to go with the Ole Miss Rebels. As the SEC guy, is there a way for Auburn to pull this one out?
I don't think so. I think I'm not sold on Auburn yet. They did have that close matchup with Georgia, but then come out the following week flat and get beat by 30 by LSU. So that's not a great showing to follow up when you took the defending champs to one score game. So, like you said, I've got to go with Jackson Dart and Ole Miss in this game as they keep rolling. And, depending on a matchup coming up soon, Ole Miss is fighting for a spot at the top of the West right now.
Right. Yeah. So Brandon went Ole Miss also. Clean sweep for us. Let's move on to a game that you highlighted early in the show. The Utah Utes versus the USC Trojans. Utah has been a thorn in USC's side for a few years now. Does Utah pull this one out, Caleb?
Looking at it, you look at how USC performed last week. Mm-hmm. Not fantastic against Notre Dame, which has a fantastic defense. And when you think of Utah, you think of a really good defensive team this season. They've been carried by that defense. They've had the dual quarterback play with Cam Rising still being out, it came out a couple weeks ago with his knee injury being more significant than originally thought. It's tough for me to say that USC loses 2 in a row, especially with them coming back to the Coliseum this week.
Yeah.
The spread is USC by a touchdown. I think I originally was going to go with USC in this one, but I think I'm going to go with Utah in this game.
Okay, I like it. My only question though is, yeah, USC struggled, but we know Notre Dame has a good defense. We also know that Notre Dame can score. I don't think Utah can score to keep USC down. I'm going to take USC to win this one. Brandon also sided with you and took Utah. So I'm not. It's clearly it's a toss-up type game, in my opinion. But give me USC. I think the offense is enough to beat Utah. Next one: Clemson Tigers versus the Miami Hurricanes. Battle of the 4-2 teams in the Atlantic. This is a tough one, man. We were talking about Miami after their big win. And then they had that really bad loss with poor coaching and just a real head scratcher. Do you think they beat Clemson this week?
I don't think they do. I picked against Clemson once or twice already, and it's come back, and they proved me wrong. I really felt that Syracuse could take it to them, and Clemson just came out and won that game. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go with the Tigers and Klubnik and Will Shipley to continue rolling here with Dabo.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I don't believe in the Hurricanes. I haven't believed in the Hurricanes since 2001. So, Brandon also slided with Clemson, so we got a clean sweep there. And last game on the agenda, Georgia State versus Louisiana. Caleb, who wins this one?
This is another one of those tough matchups of the two teams. You've got Georgia State at 5-1. Louisiana at 4-2. This is a home game for Louisiana where they are favored by 3.5 with a 62.5 spread. Georgia State's looked good. They came out and beat Marshall last week. Their one loss being to Troy. You look at Louisiana coming off a big win against Texas State, a couple of close losses. It's going to be a closer matchup than I think what a lot of people are expecting. But give me Georgia State in this one.
I'm with you on that one. I'm going Georgia State also. Losing to Troy. Troy's got a good program, a good team. No, not a bad loss there. And Louisiana, they've been competitive every week. They're a good football team. This should be a good game late Saturday night on ESPNU. Brandon goes with Georgia State also. So clean sweep for them. Caleb, that's our part of Pick'em. And now we dive into the part where my degenerate side comes out. We got our Saturday Showdown parlay of the week. Let me get that pulled up for you. I have not used the share screen part of this yet, so let's see how this works out. Present, share screen. We're going to share screen this. Share. All right, guys, as you can see, there is our parlay this week. Caleb, talk us through the your selections on the parlay of the week.
Yeah, so when you look at it, I think this is an easy, way to get the day started with an early game. You've got Marvin Harrison Jr., like we talked about, it has been, at the beginning of the season looked at as, Heisman hopeful, expected to be easily the number one draft pick or number one wide receiver in this next draft. I think it's easy to say he has a touchdown in this game. He was held without a touchdown once. Again, that was against a tough Notre Dame team defense. I don't think this Penn State defense is going to be as tough as that Notre Dame defense. And then if you look at the yardage, he had one game under 100 yards this entire season. So I think giving him 50 plus is an easy win there. So I think that's just an easy pick.
I think they're really solid picks too. Obviously, he's going to have a good game for Ohio State to beat Penn State. Well done. Brandon's selection was Air Force -10 over Navy, -10.5. Over Navy. I added the Emmanuel Michel touchdown anytime, just to beef up our numbers a little bit. He's had a really good season for Air Force. And then my contribution was Bo Nix 3+ passing touchdowns. Washington State's been a turnstile the last couple of weeks, and after Oregon's loss to Washington, I predict them to kind of roll and kind of, maybe step on the throttle a little bit extra this week, just because that seems kind of like Lanning's the kind of coach who's not afraid to run it up on you. So I put Bo Nix 3+ passing touchdowns this week.
Yeah, I think when you lose a heartbreaking game by field goal, as time expires, that's a tough way to lose a game. And like you said, you're going to want to come out the next week and, kind of blow off some steam, if you will, with a tough loss, bounce back, against, like you said, a Washington State team that's been up and down throughout the season. At one point was up in the rankings a little bit. So I think, like you said, the Ducks come out ready to go.
Yeah, I got to say, I was a believer in Washington State. I thought Cam Ward was playing really well. And then it just kind of all fell apart there last couple of weeks. So, yeah, Oregon by a large margin this weekend. Caleb, you got anything else for us before we get out of here tonight?
Yeah, I wanted to bring up something that, was kind of some breaking news today. The whole news story regarding Michigan. You look at Michigan and the probing that the NCAA is doing, claiming that Michigan are stealing signs from other teams. What is your thoughts on this news that came out today with?
Did I read it correctly that they were sending scouts to other teams' games and stuff like that? Was that part of the story?
Yes.
What's wrong with that? That seems like normal scouting to me.
Yeah, I feel like that's no different than watching tape and seeing what the opponents are. I understand if they're maybe going in a weird way, but if you're just watching tape and sending scouts to games, that's your job of scouting. So it's interesting to see that, what they're saying, the direct wording is Harbaugh is denying any knowledge in plotting to steal opponents' play calling signals by sending representatives to their games. And so I think it's early in the, I guess, investigating process, but I feel like that's not outside of normal football.
No, I remember in high school, our assistant coaches would go to the other team's games before we had to play them to watch them play and gather information. That just seems like good scouting to me. I have no problem with any of this that's been reported so far. Now, if they're, bugging the sidelines or doing something malicious like that, then sure, let's have a conversation about it. But I'm not at all against what Michigan's doing based on the findings so far. I think that's all above board. Why would you not be sending guys to go watch? If I thought I had to play Oregon this season or Washington, you're damn sure I'm going to have an assistant go out and watch those high-powered offenses, so we have an idea if we run into them in playoff time how we're going to hopefully slow those guys down. That seems like good coaching to me. I have no issues with that.
Yeah. So according to the NCAA bylaw 11.6.1, which states off-campus in-person scouting of future opponents in the same season is prohibited.
Oh, okay. If that's a rule, then never mind. I didn't know that. So
I didn't either. I was reading this article here.
That seems kind of I don't like that rule either.
Yeah, because I understand that I guess they probably want a lot of your scouting and essentially to come from probably watching tape. But I feel like sending scouts to games, I feel like that is a normal football thing. But like you said, if that's a bylaw for the NCAA and they have been doing that, maybe that's fair to think of. But if you're just thinking about, I guess, normal football procedures, that doesn't seem out of the norm. But again, if the NCAA bylaw says that, then and they are found.
Because okay, let me spin this a different way for you. Is it worse to have somebody non-affiliated with the school there recording the game? Do you know what I mean? Like how you're still getting tape somehow. You're asking another team for tape. You're asking somebody else to go record the game. Watching it on TV, the way we have to consume it is not the same as recording the actual game.
Right.
Doesn't that seem worse than just sending your own coach?
I feel like it. To me, that seems to fall more on the sketchy side of, having somebody that's not affiliated. It almost feels like in a sense of having somebody do some dirty work in a sense.
Yeah. It just doesn't feel.
You're there in the stands and you're a Michigan football staff member there. I feel like it's different than sending somebody with a camera that's not affiliated with school.
I think, and also you could almost regulate having coaches visit other games better than you could a guy who just brings a camera to the game and gets a field pass. Hey, I'm with Michigan. Yeah, we're here to watch Washington play Oregon. This is important down the line for us. It seems more above board to send a representative from the school than just get it through other channels to me. And it seems like you feel the same way.
Yeah.
I
was going to say, it would be interesting to see if they can, kind of come up with any hard official, proof that they have been doing that. I don't know how you do it unless you have some type of maybe footage of somebody, the staff member showing up at a game or something like that. Mm-hmm. I think in that sense, it's going to be hard to come up with some hard evidence unless maybe they have some email or some type of communications that they can get access to.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Proof seems like it could be very difficult in this scenario. No, I'm glad you brought that up. I skimmed over that and I totally forgot about it doing a couple other things. So I'm very glad you brought that up. That was an interesting story. But I think we're on a similar side here of we feel like that's just football scouting. That's just normal stuff. But Caleb, let's wrap it up. We got a big weekend of football. Let's enjoy it, and then we will be back next Thursday to break it all down for you.
Another quick tip for you.
Go ahead.
Before we get out of here. Your thoughts on the massive deflation of Colorado being up 29 at half and losing to Stanford?
Oh man, who that was? We've kind of moved the field goal posts on Colorado back and forth in the media and things like that. I don't care. I don't care what your record is. If you're up by 4 scores, you got to close the game out. And that's one of the worst losses we've seen in a long time. Colorado is more talented than Stanford. They should have controlled that game comfortably and won that game. Really bad loss. I think that's Deion's first really bad loss as a coach at Colorado. So it very well could be a learning experience for them going forward. But that was a rough one to watch.
Yeah, because if you look at it, like we said, Colorado went in up by 29 at halftime. So that means in the second half, Stanford is putting up 46 points in the second half.
Jesus. I mean, the numbers are just gaudy and awful. It just looks bad.
And it was overtime too, so they took it to overtime. I guess Colorado held them to, keeping it tied, but then in overtime, you can't close it out.
I guess my thing is at Colorado, the recruiting is going to have to change. Obviously, it's very cool to get the flashy receivers, corners, those type guys. The defensive lines and the offensive lines is where they're going to have to start to rebuild this program to be competitive every week. Some weeks, they'll get up for a big game like the USC comeback or TCU week 1. There's opportunities to get up for big games, but to be consistent every week, you have to have good offensive and defensive lines, and they have to start there if this team's going to continue to grow, in my opinion. That loss is coaching. That loss is overconfidence, in my opinion. It's a plethora of bad things coming together to lose that game.
Yeah, I mean, and then you look at so Colorado right now is sitting at 4-3. Their remaining schedule being at UCLA this week. UCLA has a very tough defense.
Yep.
You got Oregon State coming to town, another top, ranked team.
Yep.
You have Arizona come to town. I could see them getting a win there.
Mm-hmm.
You go to Washington State, like we said, has been up and down. I think it just depends on when you catch them. Are they on an upward swing or a downward swing?
Mm-hmm.
And then they finish out the season on the road against a tough Utah team. I see maybe 2 more wins on the season.
So they go 2-3 to close it out.
And maybe make a small bowl game.
6-6.
And I think they get a bowl game just because the bowl wants Deion and that notoriety in their bowl game.
For sure. And I think that's fair from the bowl also. I don't think that's,
I don't
crazy to say. But if we do look back where they started this year, they were projected 3 wins. 6-6 isn't terrible. I mean,
you're doubling projections, so
I know they got on the field and started winning games that we didn't expect them to win and things like that. I think 6-6 is a successful year if next year they're like 8 or 9 wins or 10 wins. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you have to continue to go up. Bring more talented. You've got more of a recruiting presence now, being at somewhere like Colorado, and you have a full offseason compared to that transition from Jackson State. Having the entire team basically that was at Colorado enter the portal. You bring half of your Jackson State team. I think this gives you a full offseason to bring some guys in and kind of beef up the roster in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, and here's the thing. I like, just because we've seen them do this in the past, what if they get up for UCLA big time? They steal a win here in the year 3-2. I think that's a massive success for them. So it is possible. I think UCLA's defense is going to give them trouble. But yeah, I think Colorado still overall, this could be a very successful building block year if things progress next year. I'm glad you brought them up also. So, yeah, before we close it out, anything else you want to touch on?
I don't think so. I think it's going to be another interesting week of college football. Like we said, you have a week where, we're starting to see those bye weeks take effect.
Mm-hmm.
You have more smaller teams getting media coverage, TV coverage. When you just look at the slate of games, besides the two we've kind of already highlighted,
Yep.
I think another matchup you might keep an eye on could be Alabama and Tennessee.
That's a good game. Does Tennessee pull the upset?
I don't think so. I think Saban's really started finding his rhythm. You saw them last week against us. We had a 3-point game, and to close out the game, their defense came up with a stop, and their offense did what they need to run out the clock. So I really think the whole situation with Milroe having a terrible game against Texas, getting benched the following week, coming out after that, kind of after having a players meeting, I think they got a lot of things straightened out, and I think they're improving week by week. This isn't the typical dominant team you have with a Alabama squad, but I think they're doing enough to get it done. And I think with the uncertainty of Tennessee, with them not being having all the hype that the preseason expected with their quarterback situation as well, I think this could be. It might be a close game, but I honestly see Bama coming out on top, even if it is a close game. Saban knows how to win, and it is in Tuscaloosa. And like we've said in a previous show, I don't think Saban's going to lose twice at home in a regular season.
Yep. I got to tell you, man, I do not believe in Milton. He just doesn't do it for me. I don't know why. I've never been a fan of him. I got Alabama winning this one. I think, like you said, they're rolling into where they need to be going forward.
And then another matchup you got to look at, Duke, Florida State. That's another ranked matchup where Florida State's been rolling, but Duke has too. Their redshirt freshman came out last week and helped them get the win last week. So it'll be interesting to see if they do get their original starting quarterback back with Riley Leonard.
Yep.
I think that could make this an interesting game, especially when you talk about the ACC, with Duke being 5-1, Florida State being 6-0, both teams undefeated in conference play.
I would feel a lot better about this game if we knew Riley Leonard was playing. I think that's the problem holding me up. If he doesn't play, it's going to be very hard to beat Florida State. But if he's playing, I might pick Duke to pull up the upset here.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. It is at Florida State, so that'll be part of it. But like we said, with that uncertainty of does Riley Leonard play or not, I think that I don't know if I have that confidence in a redshirt freshman to go into Tallahassee and get the win.
No, it's a big ass. That's a massive ass for a freshman who's played one game of snaps. Like,
yeah,
it's
one
just
start.
a lot to ask. Yeah, and he only threw the ball 12 times last week, so it's a massive ask for a freshman to do that.
Right, and especially Florida State's been a tough team this year. They've had some close shootouts, but they know how to close out games, and I think if they continue, they find themselves sitting in a pretty good playoff spot.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. If Florida State can close this thing out, they will be in the playoff. I'm comfortable saying that. They've done enough to do that. Caleb, hell of a show, man. Appreciate you coming on. I know we missed Brandon, aka the CEO, this week. Last time I checked, VSN is at 433 subscribers. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. It helps us out tremendously. Thank you for watching the show, and we will see you guys next week live from the Home Field Studios. 15% off when you use code at all caps Variety Sports on your first purchase. So, Caleb, until next time, my friend, this has been Saturday Showdown. See you next time.